Polls open for KMT lawmaker recall votes, nuclear power referendum.
Taiwanese are voting today on whether to resume operations at a nuclear power plant in Pingtung County and on whether to recall 7 KMT lawmakers. The polls opened at 8 a.m. and they'll close at 4 p.m. Votes will be tallied immediately thereafter. This is the second round of recall efforts. The ouster of 5 KMT legislators would mean the DPP could regain control of the Legislative Yuan by the end of the year. In the first round, on July 26th, none of the 24 targeted KMT lawmakers were voted out. It was a surprising result then, but few observers are predicting success for the recalls today. In the referendum proposed by the TTP, voters will decide whether to resume operations at the No. 3 nuclear power plant, provided an assessment shows that plant is safe to operate. It was shut down in May, making Taiwan nuclear-free. NVIDIA CEO Huang visits Taiwan amid chip talks and HQ plans.
First-time job seekers push unemployment rate up for second straight month.
Taiwan's unemployment rate rose for the second consecutive month in July, driven by an increase in first-time job seekers entering the labor market during graduation season. The Directorate General of Budget, Accounting and Statistics said yesterday that the unemployment rate edged up 0.04 percentage points from June to 3.40% in July, the highest level in 9 months. The number of unemployed rose by 5,000 in July versus June to 409,000. A Census Department official said the upward trend is likely to continue in August. By education level, those with a university degree had the highest unemployment rate at 4.63% in July. The rate was 3.06% for those with a senior high school education and 2.16% for those with a junior high school education. Taiwan Economics Minister Kuo Jai-hei resigns, citing health.
Taiwan Economics Minister Kuo Jai-hei resigns, citing health.
Premier Cho Jung-tai has approved the resignation of Minister of Economic Affairs Kuo Jai-hei. Cabinet spokeswoman Michelle Lee said late yesterday. 72-year-old Kuo announced his resignation in the statement sent to reporters, citing his deteriorating health after 15 months in the job. A co-founder of Topco Scientific Company was a political neophyte when he moved into the senior cabinet position. He was seen as dedicated, but lacking the diplomacy needed to smoothly push forward government policies. Officials confirmed Cabinet Secretary General Kung Ming-hin will be tapped to lead the Economics Ministry. The FBI searches home and office of former National Security Advisor Bolton.
The FBI searches home and office of former National Security Advisor Bolton.
The AP reports that the FBI has searched the Maryland home and Washington office of former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton as part of an investigation into the handling of classified information. A source told AP that Bolton wasn't detained and hasn't been charged with any crimes. Bolton emerged as an outspoken Trump critic after being fired in 2019. When asked about the search of Bolton's home, President Trump said he knows how it feels to have your home raided. There's no response yet from Bolton. Judge rules Trump can't deny funding to 34 U.S. cities.
Judge rules Trump can't deny funding to 34 U.S. cities.
A judge has ruled the Trump administration can't deny funding to Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, and 31 other cities and counties because of policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration efforts. A San Francisco district judge extended a preliminary injunction blocking the administration from cutting off or conditioning the use of federal funds for so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. That order protected more than a dozen other cities and counties, including San Francisco. Polls open for KMT lawmaker recall votes nuclear power referendum.
Taiwan's defense spending to reach 5% of GDP by 2030. President
Lai Ching-te is pledging to steadily increase defense spending, setting a goal of raising it to 5% of GDP by 2030. Lai made the remarks a day after his cabinet unveiled the 2026 government budget proposal, which included a record-high defense allocation of 3.32% of GDP. Lai said the 5% level is in line with NATO standards. The $950 billion in defense spending proposed for 2026 still needs to be approved by the legislature. That budget includes expenditures for Veteran Affairs and the Coast Guard, which previously weren't factored into the overall defense budget. It does not include a pay raise for military personnel set forth in the newly amended Pay Act of the Armed Forces passed by the opposition-controlled legislature in June. The amendment at least doubles the minimum monthly salary for volunteer soldiers to 30,000 Thai dollars and raises conscripts' minimum pay by a third to $28,590. Lai said the government will await a constitutional ruling before allocating the budget. TSMC's Wei says U.S. will not ask for stake in company.
TSMC's Wei says U.S. will not ask for stake in company.
TSMC Chairman and CEO C.C. Wei says the U.S. government won't seek a stake in the Taiwanese contract chipmaker. This confirmed recent news reports that the U.S. government wouldn't ask for shares in TSMC. A TSMC spokesperson told CNA Today that the company has never had discussions with the U.S. on the government holding a stake in TSMC. Reuters had reported on Wednesday that the U.S. government wanted equity in chip makers that receive funding under the CHIPS Act to build factories in the country. Trump announces government's 10% stake in Intel.
Trump announces government's 10% stake in Intel.
President Trump says the U.S. government has secured a 10% stake in Intel, in a deal completed just a couple weeks after he depicted the company's CEO as a conflicted leader unfit for the job. This makes the U.S. government one of Intel's largest shareholders as it works to cut more than 20,000 employees. The cuts are part of its latest attempt to restructure under recently hired CEO Lip-Bu Tan. Trump said it's a good deal for Intel and a good deal for the U.S. government. Iran's FM seeks to head off reimposition of UN sanctions.
Iran's FN seeks to head off reimposition of UN sanctions.
Iran's foreign minister has spoken his French, German, and British counterparts in an effort to stop the reimposition of UN sanctions over Tehran's nuclear program. The call overnight came as the European countries threatened to use a so-called snapback mechanism from the 2015 nuclear deal. Concerns have grown since Iran cut off cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency after its war with Israel. Iran insists its program is peaceful, but it enriches uranium at near weapons-grade levels. The European nations have set an August 31 deadline for Iran to reach a satisfactory solution for allowing IAEA inspections and easing the crisis over its nuclear program. Menendez brothers both denied parole in first bid before California panel.
Menendez brothers both denied parole in first bid before California panel.
Lyle Menendez has been denied parole by a panel of California commissioners. The two commissioners determined that Menendez shouldn't be freed after serving decades in prison for murdering his parents in 1989 with his younger brother Eric Menendez. The brothers became eligible for parole after a judge reduced their sentences in May from life without parole to 50 years to life. Eric Menendez is being held at the same prison in San Diego. He was denied parole on Thursday. The panel denied Lyle Menendez parole for 3 years, after which he will be eligible for parole again. First-time job seekers push unemployment rate up for second straight month.
14 indicted in NT $1.27 billion crypto-related fraud case.
The Shilan District Prosecutor's Office has indicted 14 people for allegedly scamming more than 1,500 people of over $1.27 billion and laundering $2.3 billion. The group has been charged with fraud, engaging in organized crime, as well as money laundering. Prosecutors have recommended a 25-year sentence for one of the group's leaders, surnamed Shi. The scheme was run by a company run by Shi called CoinW. It operated under the mantle of a company approved by the Financial Supervisory Commission that Shi acquired between 2023 and 2024. The prosecutor's office said this was despite failing to comply with anti-money laundering and legal compliance standards. Prosecutors said Shi and another man recruited investors to open over 40 physical BitShine stores to sell the USDT cryptocurrency and facilitate the exchange of fiat money for virtual currency without FSC approval. Chunghwa Post to stop nighttime mail delivery service next year.
Chunghwa Post to stop nighttime mail delivery service next year.
Chunghwa Post will end nighttime delivery of domestic regular and expedited registered mail starting on January 1st. Chunghwa Post said today that demand for the service has dwindled over time. Currently, people who are unable to receive registered mail at home during daytime hours can apply at a post office for nighttime delivery of registered mail for an additional fee of NT $7, which is collected upon delivery. The mail carrier said the low cost of the services have resulted in a serious imbalance between postal revenue and labor costs, as postal workers need to work the late shift or overtime. Chunghwa Post said its nighttime service currently handles an average of just over 3,000 registered items per month, accounting for only about 0.01% of all registered mail deliveries. Judge rules Trump can't deny funding to 34 U.S. sanctuary cities.
Judge rules Trump can't deny funding to 34 U.S. sanctuary cities.
A judge has ruled the Trump administration can't deny funding to Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, and 31 other so-called sanctuary cities and counties. A San Francisco district judge extended a preliminary injunction blocking the administration from cutting off or conditioning the use of federal funds for sanctuary jurisdictions. That order protected more than a dozen other cities and counties, including San Francisco. The Trump administration has ratcheted up pressure on those communities as it seeks to make good on the president's campaign promise to remove millions of people in the country illegally. In his ruling, Judge William Oryx said the administration had offered no opposition to an extended injunction, except to say the first injunction was wrong. The administration has appealed the first order. Taiwan's defense spending to reach 5% of GDP by 2030, President.
Texas Senate approves gerrymandered congressional voting map.
The Texas Senate has given final approval to a new Republican-leaning congressional voting map, sending it to Governor Greg Abbott for his signature. President Trump has pushed for the map to help the GOP maintain its slim majority in Congress in the 2026 midterm elections. It has 5 new districts that would favor Republicans. Abbott, a Republican, is expected to quickly sign it into law. Democrats have vowed to challenge it in court. The effort by Trump and Texas's Republican majority legislature prompted state Democrats to hold a 2-week walkout and kicked off a wave of redistricting efforts across the country. 14 indicted in national $1.27 billion crypto-related fraud case.
Taiwan's premier seeks bigger, faster cabinet reshuffle.
Premier Cho Jung-tai said today that the cabinet is preparing a bigger and faster reshuffle to meet the expectations of Taiwanese society. Cho made the pledge after voting in Taipei's Neihu district in a national referendum on whether to reactivate the recently shut down 3rd nuclear power plant. The referendum was held alongside a second wave of recall votes targeting 7 KMT lawmakers. Polls closed at the beginning of this news broadcast. The first round of recall voting was a spectacular failure, leading to disaffection among DPP supporters. According to an August 11th TVBS poll, public satisfaction with Lai's administration fell to a record low of 28%. The cabinet carried out its first major shakeup yesterday when the economics minister, digital minister, and deputy education minister resigned, citing personal reasons. KMT Chairman Eric Chu said today that any reshuffle won't lead to better results if the DPP remains focused on destroying the opposition to the exclusion of solving the country's problems. Texas Senate approves gerrymandered congressional voting map.